Hey everyone, my name's Sam, and today I'm going to be sharing another recipe with you. It's another childhood favorite of mine, and that is creamy mushroom soup. It's 100% vegan and gluten-free. I've had my fair share of vegan mushroom soup at restaurants, and I've also tried to make my own in the past, but none of them have ever been creamy enough. And I just wanted to finally recreate one that really reminded me of that one I had before I was vegan. And since this one is homemade, I'm sure it tastes much better than the canned one that I used to eat. And today's vegan shirt is actually one that I made myself. I used the Stranger Things font, the font that was used heavily in the 80s for books and whatnot. So I'm gonna get to the recipe now. It's pretty simple and it's also pretty quick to make. And these are the ingredients you're going to need. Some cremini mushrooms, some vegan butter or margarine, brown rice flour, unsweetened soy milk, and veggie broth or water in a veggie broth cube, and some homemade mayo, which was my last recipe video, so be sure to check that out if you haven't yet. Sea salt, black pepper, and some onion powder. Then the first thing you're going to want to do is chop up your mushrooms. Here's our cremini mushrooms. You're going to want about 3 cups worth, or about like 15 average sized mushrooms. And you can either chop them or throw them in a food processor, but you're going to want to chop them into like pea-sized chunks. You don't want them to be too small because then they'll cook down too much. So this is what you should end up with, some nice little mushroom chunks. And personally, I love them to be all different shapes and sizes. The less uniform, the better. The first thing you're going to want to do is get a large pan that will fit all of the ingredients. You're going to turn that onto medium heat and then add all of your mushrooms, and you're just going to stir them around on the heat until they start releasing their liquid. So I've put all the mushrooms in this pan on medium heat, and once it starts getting warm enough, they'll start releasing their liquid. It should take about 5 minutes to cook these. As you can see, the mushrooms have already gotten a lot smaller and they're starting to sizzle, and you can see some water in the pan. And just leave them for another minute or two until all of them are starting to sweat and look cooked down. So I've let these sweat down for another minute or two, and they're very liquidy and they've changed colors. That's what we got right now. Now you're going to add 1 tablespoon of the vegan butter or margarine and just mix it all around the mushrooms. Once that's all mixed in, you're now going to add a 1/4 cup of brown rice flour and mix it all around to coat the mushrooms. You're going to want to quickly mix in your 1/4 cup of flour. You'll be left with this mushroom paste. Just make sure there's no flour chunks in it. Now you're going to add in 1 cup of soy milk. Oops, spilled a little bit. You might want to switch to a whisk at this point just to get everything incorporated a little bit easier. So next, what you're going to want to do is add in 2 cups of veggie broth, or in my case, I used some hot water and dissolved a veggie broth cube inside of it. So just mix that in. Now that the veggie broth is in there, you're going to add a 1/2 cup of vegan mayo. Either homemade or store-bought is fine. Carefully add in your 1/2 cup of vegan mayo, trying not to splash yourself with the hot soup that's already in the pan. mayo all in. Make sure that the soup isn't getting clumpy on the bottom since there is flour in it. I'm actually going to switch to a whisk now because it's very hard to incorporate the mayo without spilling it, so this is a lot easier. The last thing we need to add is the seasoning, and that's going to be 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a half a teaspoon of black pepper, and then you're just gonna mix it all up and cook it until it starts to get thickened. 1 teaspoon onion powder, 1 teaspoon salt, and then the half teaspoon of pepper, and I'm just gonna estimate and grind it in. Get all of your spices incorporated, and then once it starts to boil, just turn it down to a simmer, and it should take about 10 minutes to thicken up. So I've let the soup simmer for the last 10 minutes while occasionally whisking it, and it's done now. You're left with this wonderfully creamy soup with lots of mushroom chunks in it. I hope you enjoy this recipe. It's one of my all-time favorites. Be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube, and if you make this, tag me on Instagram. That's all for now, and I'll see you all next time.